What's up guys, it's Chris here. What you probably didn't know is that when I was 22 years old, I bought my first property, a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, built it up from an open pile of land and flipped it for a profit of 172,000 Rand after all costs. So in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it with all of the 100% real pictures and documents and give you the exact numbers down to the rands and cents all the way up to where I sold it for a profit. So that if you live in South Africa, even if you don't earn a lot, you'll find out how you can do it as well. This was great fun to make, so let's get started. Okay, so something else you might not know is that I've been in the property investment and development industry for nearly 10 years now. I've had a few magazine articles, I studied property investment at 3 different universities, and I've been involved in some of the biggest developments in Johannesburg, including the building of the Old Mutual head office in Sandton, as well as a couple of JSE listed property funds. So as you can guess, property is a really cool investment type for me, and at 22 I decided I wanted to start investing in it myself to make some profits. So maybe if you're watching, then you've thought about it as well, and it's not actually very difficult as long as you know a few simple things, and that's where this video comes in. We're going to go through exactly how this property deal took place, each of the steps along the way, all of the costs involved, and at the end we'll show you where we made the 172,000 Rand profit on this deal. Okay, so the best place to start is at the beginning. Like I said, at 22 I decided to start looking for opportunities. Now, I need to make this very clear. I was not making a lot of money at the time. I was working a pretty entry-level job as a property administrator, so I'll show you as we go along how we did it, and all for the lowest cost possible. Strangely, it all started with a flyer from the robot that I came across for a new complex development. I don't have it anymore, but it looked something like this signboard. We arrived there on a sunny Saturday, the 7th of December in 2013, and as you can see, it was just a dirt road with an old white farmhouse that the developers use as their site office. Just by the way, I'll keep the complex name confidential for the people living there now. I spoke with the developers and got all of the information. Even after the meeting, I emailed and got all of the plans, dates, timelines, and costs. Eventually, I made the decision that this is what I wanted to buy. The main reason was the price, which started at 489,000 Rand for a 2-bed, 2-bath. And the second reason was I liked the area. It was a good size, and more importantly, by buying before building started, I thought I could get a good deal and that it would appreciate in value. So I went back and negotiated with the developers. Now, this is where the numbers start. We're talking about small amounts here, but I was able to negotiate them down from 489,000 to 469,000, which is a 4% saving on what is already a low price, but all of it adds up. Now, although I wasn't earning a lot of money at the time, at this price I was able to start my property investing early and without much income or savings at all. But let's break down the cost of buying a property like this one. First is the purchase price of 469,000 Rand. Usually for this, you will need a bond and a deposit. The developer here only wanted a 5,000 Rand deposit, which I paid to the transferring attorneys, bringing the remaining amount to 464,000 Rand. Then I had to pay an amount of 800 Rand, which went towards opening up the brand new council account for the property, and I paid 1,500 Rand, which went towards starting the levy collection fund for the complex, which covered things like security, gardening, and the managing agents. And lastly, a small admin fee of 159 Rand and 63 cents. These are the exact documents from the transferring attorneys for these costs, and I'll blank out the names, but I'll give you the exact real-life documents as we go along, because the more real-world examples you can see, the better you'll be prepared when it's your turn. So if you want to look at any document, just pause the video. And if you appreciate this kind of stuff and the value that it brings, please feel free to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, because it was less than 750,000 Rand, there was no transfer fees to be paid, which was great to do things cost effectively. The only thing left was the bond. We used a bond originator called Uber. You give them all your details like payslips, credit history, and they originate the best bond options for you. In this case, this was F&B. And here, once again, is the exact account summary of the bond which I took out. And as you can see, with a bit of bank fees, the total loan amount came to 470,328 Rand and 76 cents. I took out a roughly 20-year bond at an interest rate of 9.15%. Now this is probably the most important part of the video. Right here you can see that on a 469,000 Rand property with just a 5,000 or 1% deposit, the monthly installments are just 4,368 Rand and 37 cents for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. So maybe your current rental is more or less than this, but it is obtainable even on a low to medium income, and I think the property ends up looking quite nice at the end as well. But keep in mind, this is not your total monthly cost, and there are other things that you pay on a monthly basis, but we'll get to that. So now that I had the bond secured, we got all of the paperwork and FICA in place and signed on the dotted line, and then the only thing left was to actually build the place. So while the developers got busy building, we would visit the site almost every week. The total build from empty piece of dirt to when we moved in took 5 months. So for about 20 weeks, we watched piece by piece, brick by brick, the creation of something out of nothing, from dirt to a hole in the ground to foundations, and eventually to the start of a structure with thousands of bricks. And finally, once the walls were up, we chose our finishings, like the type of tiles, the number and positions of the cabinetry, and the color of the melamine countertops. Then came the electrical installation, where cables were run through conduits for power and pipes were cut into the walls for the water supply. Lastly, the finishes were put in, and after 5 months of watching a slow motion time lapse, the dirt was turned to a home and we were finally able to move in. Now, as exciting as that was, it also meant the beginning of a few more costs. You see, a sectional title property can only be transferred once it has all of its health and safety certificates, which you can only get once it's built. So we moved in and we had to pay occupational rental to the developer until it could be transferred into our name. This was 0.75% of the purchase price at 3,517 Rand and 50 cents. But eventually in October that year, I got this SMS saying that the property had finally been transferred into my name. Then at 23 years old, I was finally a property owner, but with that came some different costs. Okay, so now we have the big question. Once you become a property owner, exactly what costs do you have and how much will it cost you? Let's break them down. First is your bond. This came in at 4,368 Rand and 37 cents a month. Now this is something shocking that not a lot of people know. In this case, when you get a bond, a massive 83% of your monthly payment is interest. That means only 17% of what you pay actually brings down your balance. But of course, over time, as the balance goes down, so does the interest, and more of what you pay goes towards paying it off. So of that 4,300, 3,600 was just the interest. Keep in mind, if you don't fix your interest rate, your payment amount will change based on the prime interest rate from the Reserve Bank. The next thing I had to pay was life insurance, which doesn't sound like a property cost, but it is. You see, the bank will require you to insure your bond amount with life insurance. So if you die, the bond will be paid off and they won't be left with it. So I had to take out 500,000 Rand life insurance to cover the bond, and this gets ceded to the bank. This cost me 157 Rand 34 per month, and I took it out with Liberty. Next is your council costs. Every property owner pays assessment rates, which is basically a property tax that goes to the government for basic services and infrastructure. But in South Africa, sometimes it goes to fire pools instead. Assessment rates are calculated according to the value of your property. It can be complicated, but here's my calculations for a property of 470,000 Rand at the time. They do change, but I was paying 149 Rand 94 in assessment rates and 138 Rand 94 in refuse charges for pick it up to collect your rubbish. Then the final cost was my complex levies. You pay this to the body corporate every month for things like security, gardening, external maintenance, and most importantly, it covers the insurance for every property in the complex, including your own. This started at 599 Rand 14, but when I joined the trustees of the complex, eventually the levies went up to 1,486 Rand and 9 cents. This was for some additional security, some CSOS sectional title costs which came into law, and importantly sewer costs of 510 Rand and 55 cents per unit, which the city required. I'm not going to include electricity and water because it will differ for everyone and we all have to use it anyway, but at the time those came to around 300 Rand a month because there was a solar geyser. And that was it. So altogether, my monthly expenses for owning my first property came to a total of around 6,300 Rand. That's it. Everything for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment in North Riding, Johannesburg. It's not super low, but it's not super high either. So if your rent is 6,300 or more, you could own your own apartment, which means instead of your rental payments disappearing into thin air every month, they would be going towards paying off an appreciating asset that you can own or sell to make you money, maybe even renting it out yourself. And speaking of making money, let's fast forward to the sale of the property, how much it cost us and how much profit we made on the flip. So I stayed there for 7 years, living and paying down the bond. Eventually it was time to upgrade and we put the property up for sale. Here is a quick rundown of the sale costs. We had to do some electrical work to bring the unit up to the latest legislative requirements, and that cost R1,322.50. Then to get the electrical compliance certificate cost R1,092.50. Next we paid R1,150 for our levy clearance certificate from the body corporate. And then for the sale itself. We had 3 different estate agencies working on the property on an open mandate for a 4% sale commission. These were the agency photos when it went up for sale. We had already moved out at the time and had family staying there temporarily who had furnished it with their things. We got a few good offers and eventually an offer that stuck. So after buying it for R469,000, we sold it a few years later for an offer of R620,000. That is a nice price increase of R151,000 or a pretty impressive 33%. So let's pause on those numbers. Remember, I only paid from my pocket a total of R7,459 in deposits and fees to buy the property, and then sold it for a value increase of R151,000. So if your monthly amount was being paid for rent instead of a bond, you would never have seen that money and the landlord would be getting that increase. There were, of course, a few sales costs, like the agent's commission, which was at 4% and came to R28,520 including VAT. We had also paid off a portion of the bond by then. So when it was all said and done, and after all the fees and bonds were paid, we finally received our full and final payment, which you can see here, the actual payment that came into my bank account for a total of R172,598.99. And there you have it, how at 22 I took my entry-level salary to invest in property and flip it a few years after for a profit of R172,000 that I would never have seen if I was renting. That is the power of property ownership in South Africa, even on a small scale and by being as cost efficient as possible. I hope you enjoyed the episode and how transparent we were with all of the costs and documents, and that it helps whoever watches to understand property ownership and investment a bit better, and maybe you can give it a go yourself if you haven't already. If you did enjoy, please feel free to give the video a like, and if you want more videos like this, you're welcome to subscribe to the channel. But until then, I'll see you next time, as always, on Casual Cash. Cheers.